to 8. It's estimated that changes to the legal aid budget in England and Wales will mean 3/4 of people who are currently eligible will no longer be entitled to it.
From today, financial help with the costs of certain types of cases will be stopped. They include divorce, custody battles and personal injury. Well, the government says this will save £350 million a year. Our legal affairs correspondent, Clive Coleman, has more.
Unfortunately, the claim's been closed from the 12th of December.
Until today, legal aid for people like those visiting this law centre with a range of civil law problems has been based on their means and the merits of their case. That's now changed. The cuts coming into force today aim to save £350 million a year from the £2.1 billion legal aid budget. Examples of where funding will go include most family cases where couples are divorcing and sorting out living arrangements for their children, advice on social welfare benefits and debt and some housing problems. It's in law centres like this that the cuts are going to bite. Many of those who previously came here with family, debt or other legal problems and got legal aid will in future be told that there simply is no public funding. Now that's going to leave them with a stark series of options: either pay a lawyer privately, represent themselves, or else seek the help of a legal charity. The government says current legal aid is just too costly and resources aren't limitless.
We aim to retain protection for threats of homelessness, for domestic violence, for harassment. There is still a wide area of scope in terms of where protection will remain.
Access to legal help for those of modest means will become more challenging. Quite what effect that will have remains to be seen. Clive Coleman, BBC News.
With us to discuss this morning is family lawyer Liz Edwards, who also is chair of a group called Resolution, which represents 6,500 family lawyers and which oppose the changes, and Richard Miller from the Law Society, who joins us from our studio in Tunbridge Wells. Good morning to you both. Richard, I'll start with you, if I may. I mean, these are significant changes which anybody sort of thinking of legal aid will have to take into account.
They're very significant changes. 650,000 people a year who have previously been able to get help with the problems of everyday life will no longer be able to get assistance, and the worst organisations affected will be law centres and Citizens Advice Bureau, whose services not funded by legal aid may also be less available as a result.
The problems of everyday life, is that really is not as simple as that, is it, surely?
You're looking at things like family breakdown, problems with welfare benefits, disputes with employers. These are the legal problems that the average man in the street is most likely to encounter during their lifetime.
Liz, what areas concern you the most? Which people do you think are most vulnerable to these changes?
Fortunately, the government have provided domestic violence gateways. So for victims of domestic violence, it's said that there are protections still in existence. Our concern is that it isn't easy for people who are victims of domestic violence to evidence that violence, and that also people are victims of abuse quite often, and where there isn't violence they won't be able to gain help. When marriage breaks down or relationships break down, what people want is to know where they stand, and often that's quite enough to help them make good decisions for their family, but that won't anymore be accessible to them.
Richard, could it not be argued that in any society, government assistance to pay with your legal bills is a bit of a luxury, and when money is very tight, that's one of the things that has to be trimmed?
I don't think access to justice should be regarded as a luxury. It's a fundamental part of a society that's ruled by the rule of law. There are always going to be people who cannot afford to pay for legal assistance, and there will always be a need for some support from the taxpayer to ensure that the poor and the powerless are able to defend and enforce their rights against the rich and the powerful.
Richard, how feasible would it be to put pressure on lawyers now to offer the service, or perhaps make up the shortfall and, as many viewers I'm sure will agree, avoid these steep charges that many people have faced, which is why they have to resort to legal aid in the first place?
The legal aid cuts amount to £350 million. Most lawyers already do pro bono work either through organised pro bono schemes or just on an ad hoc basis for clients who need assistance. There is no way that the legal profession can replace £350 million worth of work that's being cut through the legal aid system.
Liz, legal aid's costing, what, something like £2 billion a year at the moment, so trimming it by 15% isn't going to kill the whole system, and it's terribly expensive.
You're talking about different lawyers doing different things. Legal aid lawyers are not the lawyers who are earning big bucks. They are currently earning very low incomes. After decades of working, you will earn something like what a nurse or a doctor,
but the cost of
a teacher might earn.
£2 billion a year as an overall cost of legal aid is a very big
And
figure.
we have suggested other ways in which savings can be made. The difficulty is that this is hitting the most vulnerable people. And throughout the country, resolution lawyers are putting in place services which are more affordable for people. But this is affecting people who really need legal advice.
It's happening. The changes are coming in. The cuts are being made. So for anyone concerned today who feels that they may not qualify for legal aid, what's a viable route for them?
What they should do is make contact to make sure that they're not eligible and that there aren't ways in which they could be helped. But if not, then there are websites. Resolution has a website about how to make decisions which are good for children. And there are services. Mediation is a good process for many. Unfortunately, it will be people who are in relationships with domineering or bullying people that will have problems.
All right, Liz, thanks very much. Liz Edwards and Richard Miller.